bashed around all over the world, so it does the job. But congratulations.
Thank you.
On you made us wait for this one, but for good reason.
Well, no, we tour a lot.
Yes.
Mainly. No, people kind of, if you're not playing where people are seeing you,
yes,
the gap is 4 years.
Yeah,
but we're doing a lot of shows, and we're first and foremost a live band. That's where I get off on the whole thing more than making records. So.
Yeah. Oh, really? I wouldn't say that when it comes to putting an album together, you certainly make it worthwhile. I mean, it's not just
they're a means to an end, and that end is playing live. But if we're going to make records, we might as well make the best records we possibly can.
And I think each album has had its high points or its credits, but I think it's going to be difficult to sort of top this one somehow.
It's a challenge.
Yes, yeah. I think that's the one thing I've always appreciated about the music that you've done, is that you've always made sure that it's been complemented with all the best possible. That that whatever you've done is eventually put across in a way that you couldn't really have done it any better. I don't think.
It's kind of the thing about records is you can't revisit them.
No.
If you're going to make a record, it's got to stand from the very day you put it out. And I think, I can't speak for everybody, but I think that so many people who make music kind of do the best they can at the time, but kind of don't push themselves. So they're not 100% satisfied with what they do. And you only generally find out with the next release, with the subsequent release, that they kind of say, we got the right producer this time. These are the better collection songs. This is. And I'm not looking to make it better each time. It's because that kind of it's looking to take them further out each time and further beyond my expectations and what I'm able to do.
Yeah.
But to say they're better each time kind of negates.
Yes, it does. True.
And they're not like that. I still can't find fault in them.
Yeah, no. But from the point of view that when you write these songs, and you sort of you must have a picture in your mind as to how that best be presented ultimately. So that means doing it with an orchestra, or just doing it there live in the studio. I mean, this album didn't necessarily have to be recorded in the way that it was, yet you chose to I think you've probably got the single biggest band in history for this album.
Pretty much, I believe. It was a kind of oversight though.
Really?
Yeah, it kind of sounds like a story, but I was talking with Dr. John about this recently, and at the time of making the record, I didn't realise that there were numbers that you gave to big bands. So, Duke Ellington's band had so many trumpets for so many trombones, and when I was putting the figures together for this album, people were saying how many trombones, I would go 8, how many trumpets, at least 10.
Yeah, it's going on.
And so it just kind of grew. Which is
okay. There's 100 of you, right?
It worked. It was more so that I wanted the sound of trumpets, the sound of trombones, rather than any kind of individual expression through that instrument. Which you obviously get with less numbers.
Yeah, when you.
So I just wanted this kind of just the sounds of those instruments.
And do you think you got it? By literally breaking every rule in the book.
It wasn't.
No, not intentionally, of course.
It's more a sort of process for me that I don't know. I didn't know that area of music I was working in, and that's the most important thing for me to put. If I put myself in a familiar musical area, it's almost like treading water. You just do what you know you can do.
Yeah.
And by doing that was to completely test myself and test the limits of the music that we make.
Yeah.
I think I got it.
I think so too, actually. But as I say, the thing with Spiritualized is that you're hugely respected in the UK. But that's your call. And I think a lot of, certainly your single biggest audience, and then obviously Europe, and then the rest of the world.
Probably America, actually.
Yes, but it's weird because it's like it's smaller proportionately, but it's bigger in numbers, isn't it?
In England?
No, in the States. So it's I think it's It's more.
Yeah.
Which is nice in a way. I mean, it's interesting because it's funny that a lot of the time the Americans seem to get it quicker than the English do, or embrace it a lot quicker.
I think that because a lot of the music I'm into is rooted. A lot of the stuff I grew up with was American roots music, a lot of blues music, a lot of soul, and I think. I can only say for a small number, but there's a lot of people that in America that feel that they're being re-educated about their music through our music, because unfortunately, music magazines, music criticism across the world isn't about. It doesn't have any history in any historical context. It's all about the current music scene, which is part of the business of selling records.
Sure.
And then at any one time, there's a few. There's a few old school names that are cool to drop, or maybe somebody's doing a reissue campaign that's massive or whatever, But it's like,
hello, Jason.
Another.
And I'm sitting with him. It's fine. All sorted. Thank you. Okay. Goodbye.
So, you do that.
No, I mean, I found that with a lot of English artists. I mean, I'm a big fan of Gavin Friday, and I mean, it's interesting. Gavin Friday can tour, sort of the west coast of America any time he likes. Really, sure, to small audiences, but I think certainly more. I don't know. They take the time to, get into what you do and understand it rather than.
It's not on a kind of immediate sell. It's not on the this is the which is not. I'm kind of. I don't mind either way. I think
more than
and I think it's the main thing with this stuff is it's not. So much music is referenced only against their peer group and against their peers, and people to aim, say, left field in today's relatively conservative musical climate. You only need to go slightly left of centre, and that's not left field as far as it's not left field on a kind of the history of music.
No, not at all.
And like I say, I'm into everything in music. I'm into the whole lot. It's not about being hip to what's going on now.
No,
but then it's not reactionary to what's going on now.
No, not at all. No, if anything, it's probably what you're doing is you're going on feel. You're doing what works for you more so than what is current fad or fashion. You could ever be.
Do you get a lot of English bands down here?
We're probably just because of the history of the country more Eurocentric, and than we are Americanized. I mean, we're Americanized through television, but only in the last couple of years really musically. I mean, our first port of call has always been England, but I just think that's because a lot of pretty much the vast majority of the of the population, certainly on the right side of things,
and quite mainstream, just because of the figures getting down here.
Sure, it's your bigger bands, I mean, the sorts of bands. I mean, although I say that, we've had everything from from Depeche Mode through to Placebo and Garbage. So it swings. It depends on the promoter really. So I mean, I was actually saying to a colleague of mine in the office this afternoon that the record companies aren't smart enough because I mean the fact that you are out here.
I'm out here for
the video.
I guess but kind of legal reasons as well. It's the only place we could get the permission to fly myself under a helicopter.
Okay.
Nobody will give us the flight.
Oh really?
Flight details to do that, or flight permission or whatever you need.
That's amazing. You can do anything.
Yeah, exactly.
So they're on, where they're hard and fast rules in other countries, and sort of you can get away with daylight robbery here, literally. Which is to say it has its upsides, but that it does cost a lot to bring bands out here. But a lot of bands are coming in, whether they're doing video shoots or whether they're doing whether they're recording here or whatever they're doing, they're here. And so I mean obviously and you need to do it with with permission from the band, but while you're here, I mean I was saying quite easily you could have played 2 or 3 gigs here and you would have had a really good audience, because people are hungry for it. I mean more so it's becoming more and more the case now because people have got to watch travel, because it's just that far enough away. So when bands do play, it is incredibly well supported, and it's great. I think a lot of bands are surprised. I mean, in your mind, you thought you were probably quite safe coming to South Africa, because, well, just from that point of view, that you could go around and you'd.
How do you mean safe?
Well, no, just from the point of view that you'll be mobbed by a million fans.
Oh, right. Okay.
Mobbing
That didn't
the
cross
streets.
my mind.
No, but whereas you're guaranteed, to be recognised, in other, obviously in your hometown and places like that. But it's a great spot, and I think more and more bands now. I mean, Corner Shop are down here at the moment, and there's a whole bunch of other bands that are coming in just because it's so dirt cheap to be able to, which is good, and it's great as well, for fans to know that you are coming, but ideally it's to play. And bands that have played, when they've left with, they've gone, I think Skunk and Nancy came back about 3 times before they disbanded. It just became their second home, Yeah.
Not bad home,
Yeah, no, it's not bad at all. But, no, as I say, earlier with all your albums, I mean, it's pretty much a total package, isn't it? I mean, from the music through to doing these fantastic. I mean, bands don't do this anymore, and you're not Backstreet Boys, so
no, we can't afford it.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, is that you're the most unlikely band to do it, and yet you've done it on, certainly on. From having colour vinyl's one thing, but I mean, from doing the whole pull box thing and all of that. I mean, I just think I'd love to know how you do that. Do you sort of sit down with BMG or Arista and sort of arm wrestle a budget? They're great concerts to see them.
To be honest, they're funded from my pocket.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And it was kind of I had this kind of mental picture of month after month or week after week, people sitting around major record company offices, like around a big oak table, saying, "How are we going to sell this shit?"
Yes.
Week in, week out, and coming up with marketing plans and retail tags and all the stuff. And I figured if you've got great music and a great package, that's all kids want.
Well,
period.
they're
not interested in how they're attacked and how they mobilise people.
Yes.
It's just, and also it's a kind of thing that, aside from all the things about a regular jewel box just being product, it's poor. It's everybody knows the faults within that. It's not everybody says vinyl is better.
Yes.
Given that you can't do vinyl, and it's kind of. It's also to do that thing about how I got into records, which is long after magazine pieces, reviews, marks out of 10. It's a record sleeve in a store with a couple of track titles on the back.
I mean, I used to buy albums like that. I was looking at the sleeve.
But you don't know, and when if it's not from your era, your period, when you buy it, when you're 15, 16, if it's from 20 years ago, you don't know anything about it.
No, which is the best way to listen to music. I mean, I think that's half the fun. Is that, I mean, like with your musical influences are essentially American,
I think they've started American. Yeah, I think they've gone a bit more everywhere now.
Everywhere. Yeah. And any particular reason, just because of a hunger to sort of
just
discover
music,
discover new music.
It's almost that thing about they were doing a thing recently in England for a magazine about who your heroes were, kind of thing, and it's kind of like. Seems like the kind of thing you do when you're in your teens or early 20s.
Yes.
After that, it's almost like music almost becomes faddish. You discover somebody else, and you discover somebody else.
Yes.
And it's so, especially now that so much more music is available to everybody. Whether it's on regular CDs or through the internet, you can get hold of so much stuff.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, you had to really seek this stuff out.
Exactly. Especially even for South Africa. I mean, I think. I used to live in Johannesburg, and I mean, there was one record store that used to import vinyl from the UK every week, and it was the only place.
Yeah.
And it was a trip. You would go and you would spend a day in the store and just discovering. And as you say, whether it was 15 years old or new, that was part of the adventure. And I think certainly, you've achieved that because, I mean, especially today. You compete against so many. I mean, the market is 20 times bigger, than it was when you started.
Yeah, but it's what Brian Eno calls the glut of CD.
Yes.
The sort of current market is it's almost like there's such a small percent of kind of innovative music that's coming from the people that make it, and it's not just this blind analog copy kind of thing where it's just like, well, this style will sell, and it's got nothing to do with us as people, but it will sell. And it's that kind of thing of not buying into genres for exactly that reason, that you know, given that only a small amount is genuinely emotive, electric, exciting music that's about the people that are making it, you might just well buy into that across all types of music, classical, jazz, blues, the whole lot, rather than, you know, I'm into this style of music.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what, you know, it doesn't matter if you're into dance music, the same ratio applies. Some people are right on the cutting edge of making beats that people haven't heard before. And then there's a whole lot that's churned out because it's...
Well, it's easy.
It sells.
Well, I think, even 10 years ago, it was fine. It was, in order to get an album released or pressed or, just out there, it took a lot more, whereas today you can do it yourself. It doesn't take much to attach yourself to a fad or to a fashion, so it's a lot easier to do it. So I think the temptation is certainly there.
Which is good and bad.
Yes, but I think predominantly bad. There is good that comes from it, yes, because there's a lot of people out there that, if you hadn't been signed, what would you have done? You would have made your music available somehow, and it would have been bloody hard to do that 10 years ago. Whereas today, the need, for a label is, other than distribution, is becoming less and less important. So, again, so you are faced with a wall of, I think that's what we do most of the time, is dissect, and you take something, you have to pull it apart, all this music that you get, and then try and figure out what within that is good, or bad, or just,
Can you buy that down here then?
Yes, you can, yeah. They bought them in because I'm not sure if they're going to be releasing this locally, but it's amazing that because the market is obviously so much smaller, they have to be a little more, they have to make sure that...
That's import though, isn't it?
Yes, no, definitely.
It's not that there aren't a lot of them.
Yeah.
That's the other thing we've been pushing, that this is the issue, this is how the records are made.
Yes.
Then they're not supposed to be limited editions anymore.
Okay.
And the figures on that are pretty big.
Yeah.
I still haven't turned it around completely.
Okay.
They're not all available like that.
No, because there's the normal, I've seen the other version, just the normal dual case version. So you just do it
Until the money runs
until the money runs out.
This is pretty much my take on the whole thing. We tour until the money runs out.
Yeah.
And then we make a record until the money runs out.
Yes, until the money, and then you sit back and go, okay, why do I do this again? But in a way, I compare, I was thinking about it driving here, so that I compare you in a lot of ways, I suppose, to someone like David Sylvian. Just not musically, I suppose, more than from the point of view that you're in a great place as a musician, because you're doing what you love, and you're doing it according to, well, I think if there are any rules in place, they're rules that you've insisted upon, rather than a record company or a financier.
I think that you can sell out on anything at any time. I don't even mean in the classic sense of selling out how much money you can make, but once you do it in any form, you can't use that cash to buy back the kind of integrity you had before that, obviously.
No, definitely not.
And it's almost like the goal after you've decided to kind of cash in on anything is how much cash you can get, how much more of this can we make.
Yes.
And there's never been any incentive to go there. It's not like it's not like we've ever got enough cash.
No.
But it's not about that. It's not about.
But it allows you, that it's respected enough by the people who matter, people who buy the albums, to support it, enough to be able be able to gauge, yes, that we're on the right page, and that we're talking to our audience more than, yes, we're pleasing a label, or we're pleasing, an ad campaign or something like that.
I think, to be honest, without wanting to disrespect any audience of ours, the only meter can be you.
Yes.
Because everybody has their own opinion, everybody has their own take on the music, everybody has their own take on what it's about.
Yeah.
So the only gauge can be whether you're fulfilling yourself and pushing yourself as far as you can.
But because I don't see a lifespan with spiritualized. I just see it continuing. It's like this mission, you know. I mean, as much as you have a certain style and a certain way of writing, and each album sort of morphs into the next kind of thing.
Just what we were saying about earlier about when people reference to their peer group and reference to, it's almost like there's a whole rash of music that people aren't playing their own music, they're playing other people's music. Once you reference it to other people of within the time you're in, it's almost like you make music that's locked in that time.
Yeah.
There's a whole lot of music that's been put out now that will sound like early 21st century music. And if you don't reference against that and you make music kind of outside of that, there shouldn't really be a lifespan. It shouldn't really be this is only going to last, this is, give this another 3 years and it's going to be something else in there. So.
But in a way, when you look back on your career so far, I mean, there must be, well, I suppose pride, I suppose, is the closest word to that you.
Pride, did you say?
Pride, yes. Well, that that you created these collections of of music that do have that do have not integrity, but have the longevity, have a personality all of their own. And I mean, and it does all revert back to you ultimately, doesn't it? Because I mean,
not in the way that people. Not in the way that people really want to apply it all to me. Almost like even as to. I guess that just some of the things that are written and said, like I have this vision and stuff. And I think that idea of having a musical vision, having whole symphonies in your head that you try to get down, kind of negates everybody else's input to it. It's a great artistic line. It sounds fantastic. But I would question, even in people like Brian Wilson that said it himself, that's how he works.
Yes.
I would tend to say that it's a little bit pushed in his favour.
Yes.
There's a little bit of ego involved in the saying of a line like that. There's a lot of people's work in all of it.
Yes, no, absolutely.
And also, to be honest, you don't get people to perform and to play great music that pushes themselves by dictating to them, by telling them what to do. The only way you get people to play like that is to make them feel incredibly comfortable that they can attempt something and not be kind of knocked down for doing the wrong thing. But it's a really bad analogy, but it works like conversation. You know when you've been sharp, you know when you've got the joke, you know when you're talking too much.
Yes.
Excuse me.
No, it's fine.
And I know it's a poor analogy, but the great music works in the same way. It's not about one person saying this is what happens.
Are you surprised though with what came out in the end? When you went in with the songs, and then obviously had all of these these personalities of people add their
it was probably the recordings were the high point, obviously, but for me, because so much work had gone into putting the dots on the paper before that, that I really couldn't do anything when the recordings were being made. And also, I can't read or write music in a kind of normal sense, so I couldn't make changes to that many people, because it requires that you can write the changes. I couldn't conduct it because I can't read what's on the paper. So it's I like it.
Yes, as I say, I mean, I think that's the most important thing, as you say. I mean, would you say that I suppose it would best represent you musically, for that time? Because I mean, from the time it was recorded,
all of it does, though.
Yes,
and it's kind of when I say about playing live, is when you're making a record, it's an objective point of view at all times. You can't sit in the studio being completely overwhelmed by the sound that's coming out of the speakers, because you don't do anything to it. You just go, this is great.
Yes.
So you make all the changes from outside. When you play live, you make all the changes from within the music.
And
it's it's a completely different way of
Yeah,
working,
yeah.
and we don't play live like going through the like some kind of dumb cabaret. These are the
Yes.
songs. This is how we play them.
Pink Floyd, yes.
Do they play like that?
They do.
I'm sure that so many bands play
Yeah.
like that. Like this is the solo.
Yes.
This is where you play the guitar.
Yeah,
this is the
the
bit you
little
can
ends,
learn if you
yeah.
if you sit at home and you want
Yes.
to play this. The whole live thing is like this shifting soundscape,
Yes, well-
and it's so freeform. It's when all the musicians come into their own,
Yeah.
because it really is this freeform kind of, you know, it's taking the kind of energy of the songs, the kind of the electricity or the emotive parts, and pushing them out, making
Yeah.
them more electric, more emotive.
But then how do you, I mean, like when you put out the album Hall gig, I mean, what was it about those shows that sort of separated them or put them up to a place that you said, okay, well, yes, I'd like to put that out and have that be a stamp of time.
It was recorded well. It was recorded.
What about?
It was the best recording
Yeah.
we had of the last 2 years.
Okay.
It's not necessarily the best
Best.
show. No, it's
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah.
And it really that record really is a record. It's that is what happened on that given night,
Yes.
that day. When you make an album, it's not really a record of this is what we sounded like, one day in Abbey Road last year.
It's spliced together.
Yeah. It's
Made so
everything's
pretty,
looked
yes.
at. Everything's kind of
Yes.
how can we do this? How can we redo this? How can we make this work in a different way? So it's a good record. But it really is just that's one evening then.
Yes. And you had to say, I mean, because of all the shows you said, okay, well, beside the venue, it was, I mean, as you say, I mean, it sounded good enough to, for everybody else to hear it. I mean, are you ever afraid when you put an album out that, people might not get it? They would
Not concerned in the
not
least. I don't read my press. I don't read
Yeah.
the reviews.
Yeah.
Not absolutely.
But then
Not
who's your
bothered.
gauge? Juliet?
Who gauges?
Yeah.
What, as to whether the record's good?
Yeah, well, I mean, whose opinion would you sort of, who would you ask to sort of, not to see whether you were right? Whether it was
It's
a
more
great album.
that it can be anybody. It can be, it's different people at different times. Some people, just kids that I meet on tour, will say something
Yes.
that I'll think that makes sense.
Yes, yeah.
But nobody who I use as a reference to say,
No,
to see
I mean,
if
that
it's
you would
working
say,
or not,
you've really got to hear my new album because, your opinion matters to me. Or,
different people.
Yes, yeah.
I generally don't ask.
Yeah. Out of fear or?
Right.
As you say, it doesn't really matter, does it? I mean, in any way.
I think the same with reviews. It's the kind of thing that when you read reviews, if people write and make you look very eloquent and sharp and whatever, you go, yeah, that's me.
That's me to see.
If they say anything bad, it's like it's kind of like looking at photographs of yourself. When you see one that you kind of look all right, you think that's me. But that isn't you.
No.
You is all the photographs.
Yes.
You is all of
then
it.
people never get to see all of that. You see, so
yeah. Well, I don't feel the need to have that kind of to have somebody saying, yeah, he's doing all right. He's on the right track. Because as far as reviews are concerned, you could probably fit the world's music journalists into this garden.
Yes.
And okay, it's kind of size of a garden, but it's not that big.
But then again, journalism is such a broad term, isn't it?
Yes.
There are many journalists,
it's very
few
few opinions.
Yes. But now, what's sort of this just being a great adventure, I suppose, for you that you're doing something obviously that you love. What would be? I mean, again, there's a lot of high points along the way, that you could always reference, I suppose. But what would be the sort of the ultimate for you to sort of say, well, okay, I've done it now.
Wow.
I can pack it in now.
I don't think there is. Only because we're the kind of what this is rooted in is exactly the same stuff that we were listening to at the first Spaceman 3 album, first record I ever made.
Yes.
And it's pushing that beyond my expectations to reach a point where I think I've got no more expectations. This is as good as it gets. Kind of thing. It just doesn't seem attainable.
Yeah. Which is
as long as you're working within that framework,
yes.
then and it's that kind of thing about trying to. It's not about the style of the music. It's about the feeling of the music. That feeling that makes the hairs on the back of your neck stick up.
Yes.
That feeling that when you first hear Jimmy Scott sing, or Gil Evans band, or anything that turns you on, and it doesn't tire. It's almost like you can play your favourite record day in, day out until it kind of doesn't work anymore. But then if you play that to somebody else who's never heard it, you revisit it. You go, you revisit it